The Galactic Academy stood on a floating station above the blue gas giant of Voral. It was the largest training center in the galaxy. It's built to shape young minds from hundreds of planets. Every race sent its brightest cadets here. The Academy had a rule for everything: how to walk in corridors, how to greet instructors, and how to behave during training. But one rule stood above all others, written in glowing letters across every hall: no cadet is allowed to visit a Deathworld. Every student knew what that meant. Deathworlds were planets where life fought every second to survive. The air could be toxic, the storms could tear metal apart, and the creatures could crush armored soldiers in seconds. No one went there willingly. No one ever returned alive if they did. On this morning, the first-year cadets gathered in Hall 7 for a lecture by Instructor Velen. He was from the Varn species, tall and thin, with a metallic sheen over his skin. His black eyes scanned the crowd of nervous students sitting in perfect rows. Behind him, a holoscreen flickered to life, showing a red list of names. Each one was the name of a forbidden planet. Velen's voice was calm, but heavy. Today's lesson is about Deathworld classification. You must understand why these worlds are restricted. Some of you think bravery means stepping into danger. It does not. Bravery is knowing when not to. The cadets listened closely. Velen's lessons were famous for being strict but memorable. He tapped the console, and the image changed to a burning jungle. Trees towered over glowing rivers of acid. Lightning struck the ground again and again. "This is Alcar 7, he said. "Gravity, 5 times stronger than standard. Life here evolved, armor thicker than our ships. No visitor lasted more than 10 minutes. The students murmured. The image changed again, showing a frozen wasteland where creatures of ice moved like shadows. "This is North," Velen continued. "Atmosphere burns the lungs. The ice is alive. It feeds on sound." Every picture made the cadets shiver. They whispered among themselves, afraid, yet fascinated. Velen finally turned off the screen and faced them. "Remember," he said, "these worlds exist to remind us of limits. They are not challenges to conquer. The Galactic Council forbids all contact with them. If you hear anyone speak of visiting a death world, report it immediately." Paused, expecting silence. But from the back row, a hand rose. Velen frowned. "Yes, cadet." A young human girl stood up. She was shorter than most and wore a calm smile that did not match the serious tone of the class. Her name tag read Mira, sir, she said politely. "Does that include Earth?" The entire hall went silent. A few cadets exchanged confused glances. One whispered, "What is Earth?" Another snickered, but Velen didn't laugh. His black eyes narrowed. "Repeat that, cadet," he said. "Does that include Earth, sir?" Mira repeated without hesitation. Velen looked unsettled for the first time. "Earth is not on the record," he said slowly. "But I suggest you choose your words carefully. Where did you hear that name?" Mira tilted her head slightly. "It is my homeworld, sir." The hall filled with murmurs. Cadets turned to each other, whispering louder now. "Homeworld. Earth. Is it real?" Some had heard stories. Others thought it was just a legend told in spaceports to scare travelers. A world where gravity crushed bones, where storms destroyed entire continents, and where even the plants tried to kill. Velen raised a hand for silence. "Earth," he said, "is classified under restricted archives. It has not been visited in over 100 years. Some believe it to be extinct." Mira smiled faintly. "It is not extinct, sir. It is alive. Very much alive." Velen studied her. "You claim to come from a death world?" "I do not claim it," she said calmly. "It is the truth." The instructor's voice hardened. "Cadet Myra, the archives list Earth as uninhabitable for most known species. Radiation levels beyond tolerance, unstable weather, lethal fauna. No life form has ever adapted to survive there permanently." Myra's eyes remained steady. "That is why we call it home." For a moment, no one spoke. Then laughter broke out from a few corners of the hall. A blue-scaled cadet leaned forward, grinning. "You were joking, right? No one lives on a death world." Myra turned her gaze toward him. "We do." The laughter faded. Something in her tone silenced them. It wasn't anger. It was certainty. Velen sensed it too. He straightened and said, "If what you say is true, you understand the gravity of this statement. You are claiming your species evolved on a world that meets every Deathworld condition." "Yes, sir," Mira said. Velen looked thoughtful. "Then tell us, Cadet Mira, how does your species survive?" Mira folded her hands behind her back. Her voice stayed calm. "We learn to adapt. The storms never stop, so we built stronger walls. The beasts grew larger, so we learned teamwork. The air changed, so we changed with it. My people do not wait for safety. We make it." The hall was silent again. Even the murmuring had stopped. The alien cadets stared at her with a mix of disbelief and curiosity. Velen walked closer, studying her as if she were some rare discovery. "If what you say is true," he said finally, "then humanity's endurance is remarkable. But tell me this, why would anyone choose to remain on such a world?" Mira looked at him and answered simply, "Because that is where we belong. Earth teaches us to live with challenge, not to run from it." Velen's expression softened slightly, but he still looked uncertain. "Very well, Cadet. Sit down," Mira obeyed. The rest of the lecture continued, but the attention of the cadets was no longer on the screen. Every mind in that hall was thinking about the human girl who claimed to come from a death world when the bell rang. The students filed out in clusters. Groups of different species talked in hushed voices. "I told you humans were strange," one said. "She cannot be serious," another replied. "Maybe that is why they banned her world," whispered a third. "Maybe they are too dangerous." Mira walked through the corridor, ignoring the stares. Her steps were light, her expression calm. She was used to disbelief. Every world she visited reacted the same way. To most, the idea of surviving on Earth was impossible. To her, it was ordinary life. She reached her dorm room and sat by the window. Outside, the gas giant Vorl turned slowly, its storms glowing blue against the darkness. She thought of home, the brown mountains, the scent of rain, the sound of thunder that shook the ground. For others, Earth was chaos. For her, it was peace. Later that evening, Instructor Velen sat alone in his office, reviewing Mira's file. The information was incomplete. The human race was listed as low population, scattered colonies. No record confirmed Earth's current condition. The last known data, over a century old, described it as a planet of violent weather, unstable tectonics, and thousands of deadly species. Yet a young cadet claimed to have grown up there. Velen leaned back, uncertain whether to believe her or not. He had seen brave cadets exaggerate before, but something about Mira's calmness made him hesitate. She had not spoken with pride or arrogance. She had spoken with memory. He opened a secure channel and called the Academy Archive. "This is Instructor Velen. I request access to Earth's historical files." The screen flickered. A robotic voice replied, "Access denied. Earth data restricted by Galactic Council Order 792. Velen frowned. "Override. Educational review." The voice paused, then answered, "Partial access granted." A series of images appeared, hold photographs and reports. Oceans covered in storms. Forests burning under lightning. Snowfall in deserts. Predators with teeth longer than arms. Volcanoes erupting beside cities of steel and glass. Yet among all that destruction, one detail repeated in every image: human life. Humans building, rebuilding, climbing mountains, crossing oceans, never stopping. Velen stared at the final report. It read, "Humanity, adaptive resilience beyond standard models. Survival under Deathworld conditions verified." He turned off the screen and sat silently for a long time. The next morning, he entered the lecture hall again. The cadets were already there, still whispering about Mira. She sat quietly in her usual seat, her eyes focused forward. Velen looked over the room and said, "Before we begin, I have a question. Who here believes a sentient race can evolve on a death world?" Only a few raised their hands. Most shook their heads. Velen nodded. "That is what I expected. But yesterday, Cadet Myra gave us a reminder that our universe is wider than our understanding. The Council may call some worlds forbidden, but nature does not follow our rules. He turned to Myra. Cadet, would you be willing to assist us in a controlled experiment? The Academy has a simulation chamber designed to replicate Deathworld environments. If you are comfortable, we would like to see how your physiology responds. Myra nodded calmly. Yes, sir. The class buzzed with excitement. Even those who had mocked her now looked curious. Velen smiled slightly. Then tomorrow we will test the strength of a human. That night, Myra stood alone on the balcony of her dorm, watching the stars. Somewhere among them was the small blue world she called home. The thought made her smile. Others feared it. Others called it cursed. But to her, it was a reminder of what living truly meant. Every storm was a lesson. Every danger was a teacher. Every breath was proof that her people had learned to thrive where others could not. She whispered softly to herself. We call it Earth. And as the Academy slept beneath the hum of the great station, quiet promise of the coming test stirred something deep within every cadet who had heard her words. For the first time, morning light filtered through the wide windows of the Galactic Academy. The cadets moved through the corridors in neat lines, whispering with excitement. Everyone had heard the news. Instructor Velen had arranged a special simulation test to study the human cadet from Earth. It was the first time in the Academy's long history that such a test was approved for a first year. Student Myra walked quietly to the training hall. Her steps were steady, her uniform neat, and her expression calm as always. Around her, groups of alien cadets whispered and stared. Some were curious, others doubtful. A few looked afraid. To them, she was a mystery that should not exist. Inside the training hall stood Instructor Velen, waiting beside a large silver door. The chamber behind it was known as the Survival Simulator. It could recreate any environment found in the galaxy, from frozen moons to molten plains. Today, it was programmed to copy the recorded conditions of a death world. Velen looked at Myra as she entered. Cadet Myra, he said, are you ready for this test? Yes, sir, she replied. He nodded slowly. This simulation is based on real death world data. The environment will shift between extremes of gravity, temperature, and atmosphere. No cadet has ever completed it fully. The purpose is not competition. It is to understand. Myra gave a small nod. Understood, sir. Velen looked at the other students who had gathered to watch from behind the glass wall. Remember this moment, he told them. We are not here to admire strength or courage. We are here to learn about life's will to survive. The chamber door opened with a low hum. Myra stepped inside. The door sealed behind her, cutting off all sound from the hall. Velen moved to the control panel and activated the simulation. At once, the chamber changed. The ground beneath Myra turned into uneven rock. The air thickened, pressing against her chest. The screen on the wall displayed readings that made the alien cadets gasp. Gravity levels rose far beyond standard. The temperature dropped so low that frost formed on the inner walls. Myra took a slow breath and began to move. Her boots sank slightly into the icy ground, but she adjusted her steps. The cold bit into her skin, but she kept walking. Her movements were slow, but steady. Velen spoke into the microphone. Cadet Myra, report your condition. Stable, she replied. The air is cold, but clear enough. Gravity is heavy, but manageable. Velen raised an eyebrow. Increase gravity to phase 2, he ordered quietly. The technician beside him adjusted the controls. Inside the chamber, the ground seemed to pull harder. The other cadets leaned forward. They had seen students fall after the first phase. No one had gone beyond it. Myra straightened her back and continued walking. Her breath came out in small clouds, her face calm. She reached a jagged cliff simulated at the far end of the room. Without hesitation, she began to climb. Each move looked measured and practiced. Her hands gripped rock and ice, like she had done it 1,000 times before. Velen watched closely. Increase to phase 3, the air shimmered. Wind howled across the chamber. carrying particles of burning dust. The temperature jumped from freezing to scorching in seconds. One of the alien cadets gasped. That will melt her suit. But Mira did not stop. She reached the top of the cliff, crouched, and scanned the glowing landscape that stretched before her. Her voice came through the speaker, calm and steady. This feels like a mild summer storm back home. Velen turned sharply toward the technician. Pause the wind sequence. The storm faded. Myra stood quietly, her face covered in sweat and frost at once. Velen pressed the communication key. Cadet Myra, how are you able to endure these extremes? Mira looked up at the observation window. Earth teaches us early. The weather changes faster than thought. One day the ground burns, the next it freezes. You learn to move, not to wait. Velen's tone softened. You mean to say your world trains its people by nature itself? Yes, sir, she replied. Our planet never gives us rest, so we never forget how to fight for life. Behind Velen, the students were whispering in awe. Even those who had mocked her yesterday now watched with respect. The blue-scaled cadet who had laughed before muttered, impossible. She should not be standing. Velen looked back at the chamber. Phase 4, he said quietly. The chamber changed again. The sky turned dark. Lightning flashed across it. Tremors shook the ground. From the shadows, mechanical beasts formed by the simulator's projectors began to move. Their eyes glowed red, and their movements were quick and violent. The simulation was now at the level used for advanced military officers, not first-year cadets. The room fell silent except for the thunder echoing inside the chamber. Mira looked at the beasts, her expression unchanging. She bent down, picked up a fragment of rock, and threw it at the nearest creature. The impact distracted it for a second. She ran toward a fallen structure, rolled behind it, and waited. When the beast moved closer, she used the moment to climb onto its back and press the release latch that shut it down. The others advanced, but she stayed calm, using movement and timing instead of strength. Velen's eyes widened. She is using natural strategy, instinct, and patience. After 10 minutes, the beasts stopped moving. The storm faded again. Mira stood in the center of the chamber, breathing heavily but smiling faintly. The test monitors flashed green across the screen. She had completed all 4 phases. Velen pressed the intercom. End simulation. Open chamber. The door opened, and Myra stepped out. Her uniform was scorched, her hair wet, but her eyes bright. She saluted the instructor. Test completed, sir. The hall erupted in murmurs and quiet applause. Even the skeptical cadets clapped their hands lightly. Velen raised his hand for silence. You have done what no cadet before has achieved. You have not only endured the Deathworld simulation, you have adapted to it. Myra lowered her hand. Thank you, sir. It felt familiar. The students around her stared in disbelief. Velen smiled faintly. I believe you, Cadet Mira. I believe your home is not a myth. After the session ended, the cadets followed Mira through the corridor, eager to ask questions. The blue-scaled cadet walked beside her. You really grew up there? He asked. On a planet that dangerous? Yes, she said simply. He looked at her with wide eyes. How did your people survive? Mira thought for a moment. We do not think of it as surviving. We think of it as living. Every day teaches us to be stronger. The storms, the creatures, the heat, the cold, they are all part of life. A smaller cadet from a gentle world asked, Do you not fear it? Mira smiled kindly. Fear is natural, but fear does not stop the rain or the wind. So we keep moving. That is how we live. They reached the cafeteria, and for the first time, the crowd around her was silent. The alien cadets looked at her with quiet respect. She sat down and ate her simple meal without attention, but eyes followed her everywhere. Word of the test had already begun to spread across the academy. Later that evening, Instructor Velen stood before the Council of Instructors. The holographic table showed data from Mira's test. The readings were beyond anything seen before. Oxygen tolerance, reflex reaction, pain resistance, all exceeded normal limits. One instructor from the gel species frowned. "You are suggesting the human species evolved on a death world. That would contradict our biological models," Velen answered firmly. "I am suggesting we update those models." Her performance cannot be denied. She endured conditions that collapsed trained officers, and she called it familiar. The council members exchanged glances. One of them spoke softly. "If this is true, humans are the only known species to adapt naturally to such extremes. No wonder the Galactic Council sealed their world." Velen folded his arms. Perhaps they feared what they could not understand. The next day, the academy buzzed with new energy. The instructors called the event the Human Test. Even senior cadets came to see the young girl, who had stood through the Deathworld simulation. Some asked to train with her. Others simply wanted to watch her practice. Myra accepted the attention with quiet patience. She never boasted or claimed to be superior. When one cadet asked why she had not used advanced weapons during the test, she answered, "Earth does not give us easy tools. We use what we have. Sometimes that is only our hands." Velen, observing from a distance, saw how she moved during training. Her reactions were fast but smooth, her balance perfect even under heavy gravity fields. She trained alone sometimes, moving through combat drills that no one else recognized. They were not academy techniques. They were old and practical, shaped by survival, not design. One evening, Velen approached her on the training floor. "Cadet Myra," he said, "you have changed how this academy views humans. Tell me honestly, what is it like to grow up on Earth?" Myra rested her hands on her knees. "It is harsh, sir, but beautiful. The ground shakes, but flowers still grow. The storms are loud, but the sky after them is calm. We learn early that nothing stays the same, and that is what makes it precious." Velen nodded slowly. "You speak of it with love." "Do," she said, "because it made us strong but also kind. When everything fights to survive, you learn the value of helping each other." Velen smiled slightly. "Perhaps that is why you endure." That night, Myra sat by her window again, looking at the stars. Somewhere among them was the blue world everyone feared. She imagined her family standing under the heavy rain, watching the lightning dance over the mountains. She missed that sound, the deep roar of thunder that felt alive. The following morning, the Academy's corridors buzzed with curiosity. Word of Myra's Deathworld simulation had spread through every floor. Cadets from higher years stopped to watch her pass. Some whispered in amazement, others in envy. None of them had expected a first-year human to endure conditions that would have flattened a squad of elite soldiers. Myra walked calmly through the halls. Her boots made soft, steady sounds on the metal floor. She carried her small satchel, containing minimal supplies. She did not need weapons for the upcoming test. Her presence alone had drawn attention from instructors and cadets alike. "Instructor?" Velen waited at the training area beside a landing pad. The wind from the station's open doors blew Myra's hair back gently. Behind Velen, a group of cadets observed, eager to see the next stage of the experiment. "Cadet Myra," Velen said, "today we will begin the Deathworld survival drill. You will enter the field simulator set to mimic extreme conditions. This test is designed for advanced cadets. You will face changing terrain, hostile weather, and simulated predators. Your objective is to survive and navigate to the extraction point. No weapons will be provided." Myra nodded calmly. "Understood, sir." Velen turned to the cadets observing. "You will not interfere. Watch carefully. Learn from the human's adaptation." The doors to the simulator opened with a hiss. Myra stepped inside. The chamber was massive, stretching further than any training hall she had ever seen. Holographic projectors painted the terrain with startling realism. Mountains rose abruptly, rivers flowed violently, and dark clouds roiled overhead. The air smelled of ozone, dust, and something metallic. Velen activated the simulation. Immediately, the ground beneath Myra trembled. A volcanic eruption formed on one side, spewing lava and ash. Gravity fluctuated, pulling her down for seconds, then releasing her slightly as though the world itself were breathing. The other cadets gasped. This was far beyond the Deathworld simulation she had survived yesterday. This field would have destroyed nearly every student present. Mira bent her knees slightly and adjusted her footing. Her boots sank into the soft volcanic rock. She could feel the heat from the lava, but her uniform dispersed it efficiently. She moved forward, slow and deliberate, scanning the terrain. A holographic predator appeared from the shadow of a cliff. It was large, with glowing eyes and sharp claws, designed to mimic one of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Other cadets would have panicked, but Mira observed. She calculated its path, the speed, and its weak points. When it lunged, she rolled to the side and used a jagged rock as a barrier. The creature's attack slid harmlessly off the rock. She continued moving, unhurried, but precise. Velen spoke quietly into the intercom. "Cadet Myra, situation report." "Stable," Myra replied. "The predator is tracking my path. Terrain is unstable, but I have a route planned to extraction." Behind the glass walls, the other cadets leaned forward. None of them had moved so confidently during training. Some whispered, "She is calm in danger." Impossible. The environment changed again. A violent storm appeared overhead. Lightning streaked across the sky. Hail pelted down, some pieces the size of fists. The wind tried to throw Mira off balance, but she kept walking, adjusting her steps with small, controlled movements. Every gust seemed familiar to her. Every strike of lightning barely disturbed her focus. The other cadets watched with mixed fear and admiration. Many had been trained in survival, but none had faced such extremes so naturally. Mira reached a narrow ledge over a simulated lava river. The platform swayed slightly under her weight. She paused for a moment and assessed the best path forward. She placed one foot carefully, then the other, using her hands to steady herself against the cliff face. A predator appeared below, its claws scraping rocks. Mira waited. When it lunged, she leaped to the next ledge, landing with perfect balance. Velen could not hide his surprise. Her balance and reaction times exceed normal human thresholds. She is predicting the environment, not reacting to it. The storm intensified. Lightning struck the river below, causing explosions of fire and steam. The heat rose rapidly, but Mira continued forward. She slid down a short slope, using her arms to maintain momentum. Her movements were instinctive, shaped by a world where every step could mean injury or death. A holographic cliff collapsed ahead, blocking her path. Other cadets would have panicked, but Mira assessed quickly. She spotted an alternate route over jagged rocks. She jumped, ran, and climbed, finally reaching a small plateau. Velen activated a new element in the simulation. Acid rain began to fall, sizzling on the rocks. Mira pulled her sleeve over her hand to protect her skin, moving steadily without hesitation. A predator emerged from the shadows of the plateau. This one was faster, more cunning. It lunged at her from above. Myra ducked, rolled, and used a rock to knock it away. She did not kill it. She merely redirected it, keeping herself safe. Survival was not about aggression, she thought, but about strategy and calm judgment. The other cadets whispered loudly behind the glass wall. "She is amazing. No one can do this." How does she know what to do? The storm intensified further, making the simulation almost unbearable. Lightning struck close, and winds reached speeds that bent reinforced trees. Lava flowed in new directions, blocking paths she had intended to use. Acid fell harder. Every step became a challenge, but Mira never hesitated. Hours passed inside the simulation. While the other cadets had fled or failed in mere minutes, Mira continued. She climbed, ran, hid, and used every instinct she had. Her mind was calm, her body moving in perfect coordination with the hazards around her. Finally, the extraction point appeared ahead. It was a glowing portal at the edge of a cliff, beyond the danger zones. Mira adjusted her pace, carefully moving over the last uneven rocks. A predator lunged at her one final time. Mira used her body to deflect it into a nearby fissure. She ran forward, leaping into the extraction portal. The simulation ended immediately. The holographic hazards vanished. The air returned to normal. Mira stood panting slightly, sweat and frost covering her. But her eyes shone with quiet triumph. Velen pressed the intercom. End of test. Cadet Myra, report. I reached the extraction point, Myra said calmly. I am unharmed. The glass wall opened, and the observing cadets rushed forward. Some cheered quietly. Others stared in disbelief. Even instructors who had doubted her yesterday were impressed. Velen approached her slowly. You have completed the Deathworld survival drill in record time. No cadet has ever lasted this long under such extreme conditions. You have demonstrated endurance, strategy, and adaptation beyond any known standard. Mira smiled faintly. Thank you, sir. It felt like home. Velen nodded. Then your people truly come from a death world. Myra's gaze softened. Yes, sir. Earth is dangerous, but it teaches strength and patience. Every challenge is a lesson, every danger a teacher. The cadets whispered among themselves. Some had already begun discussing ways to study her methods, hoping to learn the secrets of survival from a human. Others simply stared in awe. That evening, Mira returned to her dorm. She did not boast about the test. She simply prepared her supplies for the next day and looked out at the stars. The academy was full of wonders, but her thoughts drifted to her home. Mountains, rivers, forests, and cities that survived storms and quakes. She remembered the thunder rolling across the mountains, the smell of wet soil, the sight of lightning reflecting in pools of water. She smiled. For her, the trial had been familiar. It reminded her of childhood lessons, when she learned to climb cliffs, cross rivers, and avoid predators that were far more dangerous than the holograms of the academy. The next morning, Instructor Velen gathered the cadets in the main hall. Cadets, he said, yesterday we observed the human's ability to endure death world conditions. Today, we learned from her. Humanity's survival is not based on weapons or shields. It is based on adaptation, observation, and calm judgment. Watch carefully, and you may understand what has allowed an entire species to thrive where others perish. Mira stood calmly at the front of the hall. She demonstrated techniques she had learned on Earth's how to move over unstable ground, how to read environmental signs, how to avoid predators, and how to find safe shelter quickly. Each movement was deliberate and precise. Each decision was backed by instinct honed over generations on a dangerous world. The cadets tried to imitate her. Many failed immediately, but a few began to understand. Instructor Velen watched with satisfaction. Myra's lessons were teaching more than survival. They were teaching resilience, patience, and respect for nature. By the end of the day, the cadets had a new respect for humans. Not because they were strong, but because they had learned to live in a world where strength alone could not survive. Earth had created people who could endure anything. And now, the Academy understood why the Council had once feared it. Mira returned to her dorm that night, quietly reflecting. She did not seek recognition. She only wished that the galaxy might one day understand that survival was not about fighting the world, but learning to live with it, and somewhere deep inside the Academy, a new curiosity began to grow among the cadets. They had seen a human survive what others could not. They had seen courage. The news of Mira's Deathworld survival test spread quickly through the Academy. Cadets from multiple species whispered about her skill and endurance. Some were amazed, others felt a spark of jealousy. A few ambitious cadets began to think of testing her limits themselves. One morning, a group of senior cadets from the warrior species known as the Koran approached her dormitory. They were taller, broader, and clearly used to authority. Their leader, a cadet named Vash, stepped forward. His golden armor glinted under the station lights. "Human," he said, "we have heard about your performance. Some of us believe you are exaggerating. We challenge you to a survival duel." Mira looked at them calmly. Her dark eyes met Vash's golden ones. "A duel?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Vash said. "We will enter a Death World class training moon. Only survival skills. No weapons. Whoever reaches the extraction point first wins. The Academy may observe, but your victory, or failure will be clear to all. Mira considered it for a moment. Then she nodded. I accept. The hall fell silent as other cadets gasped. Some tried to protest, but Instructor Velen stepped forward. Cadets, he said firmly, this duel will be closely monitored. Only one of you may exit at a time to avoid accidents. The purpose is not competition, but learning. I approve the challenge under controlled conditions. The next day, a transport carried Mira and the Corrin cadets to the surface of the training moon. The landscape was harsh, designed to replicate the worst of Deathworlds. Mountains of jagged rock rose sharply, rivers of molten lava flowed unpredictably, and storms whipped across the barren plains. Gravity was set slightly above normal, and environmental hazards were programmed to appear at random. The Corrin warriors flexed their muscles, confident. Mira walked calmly, her satchel light and her uniform ready for the challenge. Instructor Velen and a team of observers hovered nearby, recording every moment for study. Velen activated the simulation. Immediately, the ground shook. Volcanic eruptions sent smoke and ash into the sky. A sudden earthquake split a section of the path ahead. Lava surged across the terrain in a wave. Holographic predators emerged from the shadows, moving swiftly and silently. The Corrin cadets panicked slightly. They had been trained for combat, but the chaotic environment overwhelmed them. Mira, on the other hand, moved with precision. Her steps were calculated. Her eyes scanned the terrain for hazards. She climbed a jagged slope while the Corrin cadets slipped and stumbled. One cadet yelled, "How is she not affected by this?" Mira ignored the noise. She focused on the ground beneath her feet, the air around her, and the movement of predators nearby. A sudden flash of lightning struck close, scorching the rocks, but she adjusted her path instantly, using the explosion to her advantage. The Corrin leader Vash frowned. She moves too quickly. She reads the environment like she knows it. Hours passed, and the other cadets struggled to survive. They lost time climbing cliffs, navigating rivers of molten rock, and avoiding predators. Mira, however, moved steadily, never panicking. When a large rock formation collapsed in her path, she assessed it, found a safe route around it, and continued forward without hesitation. A violent storm suddenly appeared. Acid rain fell from the sky. Wind gusts tried to throw the cadets off balance. The Corrin screamed and huddled, unsure of what to do. Mira bent low, covering her head with her arms when necessary, then pushed forward. Finding shelter behind jagged rocks and waiting for the worst to pass, Velen observed from above. "She adapts," he murmured. "Her instincts are precise. Every movement is efficient. This is more than skill. It is experience forged in a hostile world." Mira reached a narrow canyon. Lava flowed through the bottom, and rocks jutted sharply along the sides. She needed to climb carefully. The Corrin cadets approached the canyon as well, trying to follow. One of them lost balance and nearly fell into the lava. Mira quickly extended a hand and helped him onto a safer ledge. "Why do you help them?" one of the observing cadets whispered. Mira's eyes did not waver. "Earth teaches us that survival is not just about strength. Sometimes helping others ensures everyone makes it through." The Corrin cadets were stunned. They had expected her to ignore them, but the human moved forward with care and purpose. Some grudgingly followed her guidance, learning to move through hazards without panicking, as the sun of the training moon began to set. The final challenge approached. A massive cliff blocked the path to the extraction point. Predators appeared in large numbers, surrounding the area. Lava spewed from cracks below. The storm intensified, lightning striking repeatedly near the cliff's edge. Vash and his team hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Mira stepped forward. She studied the cliff face carefully, noting the small ledges, cracks, and overhangs. She climbed steadily, using her strength and balance to navigate the hazardous rocks. Lightning struck nearby, but she continued, unaffected by the flashes or thunder. One Corrin cadet tried to follow her, but slipped and fell, narrowly catching a rock to avoid a deadly drop. Mira glanced back and said calmly, "Move slowly. Trust the terrain." Do not rush. Gradually, the Corrin leader realized they had underestimated her. She is not just human. She is something else, Vash muttered. Mira reached the top of the cliff. From there, the path to the extraction point was visible. She ran carefully, avoiding lava flows and unstable ground. The Corrin cadets followed as best they could, but Mira was clearly ahead. Finally, she reached the extraction portal. Without hesitation, she entered it, ending the simulation. The chamber returned to normal. Mira stood panting slightly, but her eyes shone with calm triumph. Velen stepped forward. Cadet Mira, you have completed the Deathworld challenge ahead of the other cadets. Your endurance, strategy, and judgment have been proven once again. You have not only survived, you have taught the other cadets an invaluable lesson. Mira nodded, smiling faintly. Thank you, sir. It felt like practice. The other cadets arrived at the portal, exhausted, burned, and shaken. They looked at Myra with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The Corrin leader approached her, his face serious. I underestimated you. You are exceptional. Your people must be remarkable. Mira looked at him calmly. Earth is harsh, but it teaches lessons. Strength alone does not survive. Patience, observation, and respect for the world do. Alvea. The Corrin leader nodded slowly. I will remember this lesson. Word of the duel spread quickly across the academy. Cadets began to approach Mira, not with fear, but with respect. Some asked her to teach them survival techniques. Others simply watched, trying to understand how a human could endure conditions that had defeated many trained soldiers. That evening, Mira returned to her dormitory. She was tired but calm. She did not boast about the duel. Instead, she prepared her supplies for the next day and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them was Earth, her home, a world where every day demanded survival. Every storm, every predator, every challenge had shaped her people into what they were. Instructor Velen entered quietly. Cadet Mira, he said, you have changed the Academy's view of humans. Your people are no longer a subject of curiosity. They are a model of adaptation and resilience. Mira smiled faintly. I only hope others may learn from it, sir. Velen nodded. They already are. Today, cadets from multiple species asked to train under your guidance. They want to learn how to endure rather than merely fight. That is a lesson you have given without even trying. Myra looked at him quietly. On Earth, survival is not about proving strength. It is about living with challenges and respecting them. That is what I hope they understand. Velen smiled. I believe they will. Humanity may be young in galactic history, but its endurance is unmatched. You are a reminder that life adapts in ways we cannot always predict. Mira returned to the window, watching the stars. She thought of her world, the mountains, rivers, storms, and forests. She thought of the lessons learned from every danger she had faced. For her, the simulation had been ordinary. For the Academy, it had been extraordinary. And deep within the Academy, a new respect began to grow among the cadets. They had witnessed a human survive what others could not. They had seen calm in chaos, strategy in danger, and patience in a world that seemed impossible to endure. For the first time, many of them began to believe that strength alone did not define survival. Humanity had shown them a different way, a way shaped by challenge, endurance, and wisdom. The next day, the Academy announced a new program. Cadets from all species could attend training sessions led by Mira. The announcement emphasized that her experience came from a world that had mastered survival through adaptation, not power. Students crowded the halls, eager to learn. Mira accepted quietly, moving among them with her usual calm demeanor, teaching lessons not of combat, but of observation, strategy, and living with the environment by the end of the week. The Academy had a new respect for humans. Not because they were the strongest, because they had learned to survive in a world where strength alone could not endure. Mira had not only proven her own abilities, but had begun to change the way the galaxy viewed her entire species. And somewhere, far above the training moon, Instructor Velen looked at the stars and thought of Earth, a world the galaxy had once feared. now shaping the future of cadets who had never seen it. The morning sun rose above the silver towers of the Galactic Academy. The central hall was filled with cadets from dozens of worlds. Their voices echoed across the dome as they waited for the commandant to speak. This was the final assembly of the training season, where awards and lessons of survival would be shared. Every cadet wanted to know which of them would be praised for courage and strength. Lena stood near the back row with her squad. She wore the same gray uniform as everyone else, yet there was something calm and firm in her posture. Her eyes were sharp and steady. Her friends whispered around her, nervous about what the commandant might say about the last survival test. The training on the storm planet had been harder than any before. Many cadets had nearly given up, but Lena had kept them alive. When the commandant entered, silence fell. His tall frame and golden armor reflected the light of the hall. He stopped near the center and looked across the rows of faces. His voice carried power when he began to speak. Cadets, you have faced what we believe to be impossible environments. You have survived storms, hunger, and fear. You have seen what it means to fight nature itself. Yet one of you has shown a lesson greater than any we have taught. The room grew still. Every cadet leaned forward, wondering who it was. The commandant raised his hand toward the back of the hall. Lena of Earth stepped forward. Lena walked down the path between the rows. The sound of her boots echoed with each step. The other cadets stared at her, some with curiosity, others with quiet respect. When she reached the stage, she stood tall, hands behind her back. The commandant looked at her with a calm expression. Cadet Lena, do you know why the galaxy forbade visits to Deathworlds? She shook her head. No, sir, but I can guess. He nodded. We forbade them because they are too dangerous for life. Worlds where storms tear apart mountains and air itself can kill the unprepared. Yet your world, Earth, is among them. And still you came from it alive and unbroken. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some whispered in disbelief. One alien cadet raised his hand and asked, Sir, if her world is a death world, how did she survive? The commandant turned toward the cadet. That is the question that has guided our studies for many years. We found that humans did not just survive on Earth. They built civilizations, crossed oceans, and learned to rise after every disaster. He looked back at Lena. Cadet, tell them what makes your people endure what others cannot. Lena's face remained calm, but her voice carried strength as she spoke. We had no choice but to adapt. Earth changes every day. One moment it gives life, the next it tries to take it back. We learn to grow food in deserts, to live near volcanoes, to face storms that destroy everything we build. Every time nature pushed us down, we learn to rise again. We do not fear the world because it is our teacher. Her words filled the air. Even the translators that converted her language into dozens of alien tongues paused slightly as if the machines themselves wanted to listen. Another cadet, small and blue-skinned, asked softly, So your people fight the planet every day? Lena smiled faintly. Not fight. We live with it. We learn from it. Earth teaches patience, pain, and strength. It never gives peace, so we make peace ourselves. The commandant raised a hand to quiet the whispers. There are legends in this academy about species that came from Deathworlds and turned into warriors beyond measure. Many thought those were only stories, but now we see proof before us. He looked around the room, his voice steady and loud. Understand this lesson. Strength is not born in safety. It is forged in struggle. The humans did not seek comfort. They found a way to stand even when their home tried to break them. This is why we call Earth a death world. Yet its children call it home. The hall was silent. Then the commandant turned to Lena again. Cadet Lena, what would you say to those who still fear your world? Lena looked over the crowd. Hundreds of alien eyes met hers. She could see fear, curiosity, and respect all mixed together. Then she smirked, the same small, confident smile she had worn during the storm training when everyone else panicked. Her voice was calm and clear. We call it Earth. Those 4 words spread like a wave through the hall. The translators repeated them in every tongue, yet no word carried the same weight as the original. The cadets felt the meaning not just in sound but in spirit. The silence broke into applause, not the usual polite clapping, but a deep rhythmic sound that filled the chamber. Even the instructors joined. The commandant smiled for the first time in the ceremony. Later that evening, Lena walked outside the academy dome. The twin suns were setting beyond the mountain edge. The air was cool, and the stars of the galaxy began to shine. She thought of her home of rain beating on rooftops, of the smell of soil after storms, of oceans that roared like living beasts. She knew the galaxy saw Earth as a threat, but to her it was life itself. Her friend Ral, a tall insectoid cadet, approached quietly. "Lena, do you think one day we will be allowed to visit your world?" Lena smiled again. "Maybe when the galaxy is ready to understand it?" Ral tilted his head. "And if they never understand, then Earth will still be there," she said softly. "Still spinning, still testing whoever dares to step on it." They both looked up at the stars. In that moment, Ral felt a strange mix of fear and admiration. He finally understood what the instructors meant when they spoke of Deathworld's strength. It was not anger or aggression. It was quiet. It's patient endurance, the kind that only grows when life never stops challenging you. Back inside the academy, whispers of Earth spread through the dorms. Some cadets searched the galactic database for images of the planet. They saw mountains taller than any known world, seas filled with storms, deserts where lightning struck sand into glass, and forests so vast they covered continents. For many, it was the first time they believed such a place could exist. The next morning, Commandant stood at his window, watching the cadets train. He spoke to his assistant in a low voice. "Do you think we were right to forbid visits to Earth?" The assistant hesitated. "It may still be dangerous, sir. But perhaps danger is what shapes greatness." The Commandant nodded slowly. "Perhaps it is time to stop fearing what we do not understand. Perhaps the galaxy has more to learn from humans than we thought."
Oh.
He looked out toward the training field where Lena was leading a new drill. Her movements were sharp, her orders clear. The other cadets followed her without question. She was no longer just a human cadet. She had become a symbol of what it meant to endure. As the suns rose higher, their light reflected off the Academy's banners. The symbol of unity glowed above them all. For the first time in the long history of the Galactic Academy, the word Earth was spoken not as a warning, but as a mark of respect and far away. Across the galaxy, on the blue and green world that many feared, the wind blew over mountains and seas. It whispered through forests and across empty plains. If one listened closely, it almost sounded like laughter, soft and proud. As if the planet itself knew its children had reminded the stars of what true strength meant.